Hello and welcome to this special CNBC Africa debate. Today we are talking about selling East Africa as one destination. Now, when you think of the region, of course, you think of the pristine beaches of Mauritius. You also talk about excellent beaches in Kenya as well as Tanzania. In addition to that, this is also a region, of course, that is home to the great animal migration, the biggest on earth. And of course, remember the gorillas in Rwanda as well as many other tourism attractions. And yet, the region continues to play second fiddle in terms of tourism arrivals when you compare to the rest of the African continent. Figures that I came across from the African Development Bank showing that when you're talking about numbers of arrivals in order, you're talking about Morocco, Egypt, you've got South Africa, you've got Zimbabwe. And the question we have to ask is, why is that the case? I've got an excellent panel with me here today to try to answer that question. Let me introduce them. Beginning from my extreme left, I've got John Mirenge, CEO of RwandaAir. We also have Belise Kariza, Chief Tourism Officer, Rwanda Development Bank. And last but not least, we have Manzi Kayihura. He is Chairman, East Africa Tourism Platform. Gentlemen, lady, thank you for your time and welcome to the program. Let me put the question to you first, Manzi. I was surprised when I saw those numbers because in my mind, when you talk tourism about Africa, you are talking about Kenya, you're talking about Tanzania. I was surprised that Southern Africa is bigger than East Africa and North Africa is bigger than the other two. Why is East Africa not kicking as much weight as it does in the mind, if you like?
Firstly, those figures are based on 2014.
Yes.
And that's when Ebola came into the scene. So the minute Ebola was mentioned, the whole region was affected. That's the first and foremost. Going into 2015, we had insecurity issues in Kenya. Again, that affects the whole region. So I think it's about time we saw ourselves as one destination because we're affected by what happens to our neighbors.
That's for East Africa as a whole?
For East Africa as a whole.
Okay.
We cannot overlook issues that the neighbors are having because we're always seen as one, as East Africa. The issue is not coming to Kenya or coming to Rwanda. It's about coming to East Africa, going to Indonesia. It's about coming to East Africa, going to Brazil. So the sooner we realize that these problems that are seen as generalized as East Africa, we'd better market it and tap that opportunity and say, look, we are one market, let's capitalize on it.
Do you see that being done? And if you do, I would love a time frame during which you think that could be achieved.
It's a process. Already with the coming of the one visa for the Northern Corridor.
That's one big strategy, yeah.
That's one big strategy. After one visa, obviously when you say one visa, you imply there's one destination. And that's where we as the private sector come in. That's where the East African Tourism Platform comes in. Our mission and our vision is actually to create one market for East Africa. And we're in the process of agreeing on it. We hope in the future to have one standard, different trade fairs. Yeah. We have to see ourselves as one, and we're pushing that agenda.
Absolutely. Belise, let me come to you. Your impressions of those numbers and perhaps the potential that you see the region in terms of the whole African picture and whether indeed East Africa can overtake the other two that I have mentioned at the top.
Yeah, as Manzi said, I think Ebola actually played a big role in those numbers.
Even though there were no cases yet.
Yes, and of course the media didn't help, the international media didn't help. So I will talk about the content that we take out there. The media needs to play a big role in selling the right content to the international media. So we should not wait for the international media to say our story or to tell our story.
Sure.
That's number one. Number two, I think for the Northern Africa, I think there is a big, the big reason I think is, apart from Ebola, is the proximity with the European countries.
Right.
And of course the easy access flight, etc., which is short as well, which we all know those, that is the number one reason why a travel destination can have a competitive advantage. Yeah. For Northern Africa as well, like let's say Egypt, they have some selling points, some competitive selling points, like the historical brands like pyramids, etc.
Yes, of course.
That also contributes to the fact that the Northern Africa is big, has a big competitive advantage over the Eastern African countries. To answer the second question, yes, I think there is a lot of potential. I already mentioned it. If we can sell the right content from our media to the outside media, to the outside world. I think that can help. But the other thing that we're doing right now, that we started doing right now, it's some joint marketing programs. The first one is when we go to these trade fairs, I'll mention some of them, ITB and WTM, we go as one East African destination, if I can call it like that.
Right.
So we, I will just give you a picture. We actually in the same area. We're selling East Africa. I'll mention the 3 countries, Rwanda, Uganda, and Kenya, as one destination. Of course, the one single visa, the single visa helps a lot, allowing a tourist to come to Rwanda and hopping and going to Kenya and Uganda.
Right.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. So there's progress. I was hoping you're not looking at me when you were saying the media must be doing its job, because I'm trying. I am trying. John, let me come to you. Do you share their optimism that East Africa indeed can overtake the other 2 nodes?
Yes, I do. I do, in that from where we sit as an airline operator, we have seen very impressive growth numbers in terms of tourists coming through into the region. And that in itself is testimony to the fact that there is potential in this region. And until recently, when we saw a bit of this political instability in our neighbors, East Africa for the last 10 years had been a very stable region compared to some of those areas you're talking about, especially after the Arab Spring, which pushed away a lot of tourists into the North African region that we're comparing with. Again, this region still has an opportunity to remain stable and continue to attract more and more tourists. But probably what I would want to add is to see a lot more marketing done even within the continent itself. Right. As an airline operator within, mainly on the continent, one thing that we have not seen is lots of inter-African tourism happening. I mean, when we segregate the numbers, you'll see that mainly those that come from parts of Africa to East Africa are mainly on the conference, business, family to family, and any other visits, but very little of real tourism. So we've always kind of depended on other continents supplying the tourists that we need into the region. That's a question for him, isn't it? I think so. Absolutely. I think so. But anyway, one thing true is that the optimism is there. And I mean, we have all the attractions that could turn us into, you just mentioned a few of them. Yes. The great beaches, the mountain gorillas, the great animal migrations, the Nyungwes of this world. So we really need to work around probably our communication and, again, also give a bit of focus onto the continent. I mean, I think there are people within the continent that have not had a chance to visit some of these attractions we're talking about.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, because I was actually going to put this as much lower into the program, and I think I'm completely wrong in doing that, because the one thing that we continue doing as Africans is that we continue downplaying our own role. Intra-African tourism, intra-African trade. Why is this not foremost in focus for platforms like yours?
It actually is one of our mission statements, to promote inter- and intra-African tourism. And it's happening, slowly, but it's happening. We've got to create awareness. If you look at the figures for the coast of Kenya last year, the 2 leading countries for providing tourists into the coast of Kenya were Rwanda and Uganda.
Okay.
So it is happening. And we're seeing more and more.
Is that because of the univisa, the single visa?
In part, yes, I would say yes.
Interesting.
Yes, in part, definitely. Because if you can travel with your national ID, it does help. Yeah. Yes. So the move is there. And we're spending more time explaining to our other Africans what we have to offer each other. Thanks to airlines like RwandaAir, they've opened up the rest of Africa for us. Yeah. Going to Mombasa used to be, you'd have to go via Nairobi to take a whole day. Now it takes, what, an hour, 50 minutes? So all that has changed.
Yeah. But what about this other stereotype that has always been there, that Africans don't travel because they don't have money?
That is wrong. Actually, we travel quite a bit. If you look
and we don't have a tradition of traveling actually and seeing attractions, because even within our own countries, sometimes the accusation is that we don't even know what we have.
Yes, we do have to create awareness. And I think we have to start at a very early age to create awareness from our children on about what we have to offer ourselves. As a country, if we take Rwanda as an example, we need to create domestic tourism. I think I'll leave that to Belise, but you're absolutely right. We need to create awareness. But the impression that Rwandans don't travel, Africans don't travel is not true. We do travel. We just have not traveled to destinations that that I'd like them to travel to.
Sure.
Yeah.
Do you want to come in?
Yeah, sure. I'll agree again with Manzi. I think creating awareness is what is the winning strategy here.
Is this something that you guys are actively working on?
Yes, we've done a domestic tourism campaign last year in 2014. We're seeing some improvement, but we definitely need to improve on the awareness aspect. Part of the campaign, before we started the campaign, we did a small survey to understand what are the reasons behind Rwandans not traveling. And indeed, I would say 60% of them, it's mostly because they're not aware.
Right.
They will rather go to Dubai and other exciting places, not because they're not interested in Rwanda, but because they don't know.
Right.
I'll take this opportunity to tell every Rwandans out there, you know, there's so much you can see in Rwanda.
What about the issue of cost?
Cost as well was mentioned in the survey, but not as a big number, because I think when it's every mindset, every person, when they decide to go on a vacation, they know there is a cost that is going to be applied. Of course, they're sensitive on the cost, and then we are talking with the private sector to look into ways of coming up with packages during the peak, the low season, where we can promote those destinations to the Rwandan market.
Yeah, Manzi, do we need to discriminate in the prices that we offer tourists between the African tourist and the European tourist, or the American tourist, or the Asian tourist?
Definitely.
Can we do that?
Definitely. That's what's going to spur.
Is it feasible? Is it sustainable?
It is sustainable. I think what you're trying to do here is to spur the interest. If I take an example of the coast of Kenya, Uganda, or Rwanda in this case, East Africans pay less than everybody else. It's vital that we create that advantage for our neighbors to benefit more from our tourism. It also spurs our low season business. So I think it's very necessary. Yes.
Okay. John, let's move on and talk about one of the big strategies that we've seen coming out of the East African region, the single visa. And also, I think what Rwanda has done in terms of allowing every African visitor the ability to be able to come and pay your visa on arrival as long as you can justify where you're going, absolutely, I wouldn't say revolutionary, but certainly something that has not been done before. Let's assess the impact of the single visa since implementation. What have you seen in terms of your own numbers and in terms of what you've also seen generally within the tourism sector?
The impact is definitely significant, there's no doubt. I mean, in terms of the network that we serve and the move to create Kigali into maybe a third hub within the sub-region is already benefiting from that, because especially that Africans are still basically our biggest travelers in terms of numbers. Fact that they can cross over, I mean, jump on a plane and get into Kigali and sort out the visa on arrival. That in itself, beyond the convenience that carries, it even gives a good feeling. It's like you're home. Africa accepted. Is your home. You're accepted.
That's true.
You're welcome. That has really placed us in a very favorable position.
That's why I didn't ask you whether you have got special prices for Africans or not, because I realize
we're getting there. We're getting there. And again, through collaboration with some of these travel agents and tour planners, we've seen a lot of groups coming through to Rwanda just by the fact that if you're planning your next destination to break away for a week, there's one country on the continent that sits ready for you and happy to have you.
Yeah, whenever you're ready.
Especially whenever you are ready. Of course, the other bit that we've also seen, which you just mentioned, is about is around the single visa. I mean, you just imagine the convenience of paying a visa in one of the 3 or 4 countries and being able to hop within the sub-region.
Yeah.
And our network is really very, I mean, I would say well connected in the sub-region.
Right.
And then it becomes just a matter of jumping on the next flight out in the morning or in the evening, and either in Kenya, in Uganda, in Rwanda. So it becomes very easy. So the numbers can show that there's been good impact.
Yeah.
And for sure, my plea to the rest of the continent would be that we get where everybody else is. I mean, if you take the European bloc or take the North American bloc, you just move from one country to the other freely.
Yeah.
I think that is where we should have been 50 years ago.
Yeah, and we've seen an attempt at that in between Zimbabwe and Zambia as well. They've got the uni visa. I was talking to Manzi earlier about that. In terms of the numbers, are you able to supply us with some numbers in terms of the impact that we saw from the introduction of the uni visa?
Yes, in general, I'll say the number shows that there was an estimated 11% increase from the East African countries, of East African visitors. And specifically for Kenya and Uganda increase of 16% and Kenya from 19%.
Wow.
Yeah, so I'll say it's a very promising impact in terms of numbers.
Which begs the question, why have the other countries that are part of the East African community not joined? Let me throw that live snake to you, Manzi. The big elephant in the room is the ability and willingness of the other countries that are members of the East African community to be part of the uni visa. Because I would imagine if you all had a single visa for Burundi as well as Tanzania and the other 3 countries that are already in it, the numbers she's talking about would probably be exponentially higher.
They've both expressed interest. Tanzania has expressed interest in joining, so has Burundi. So has Ethiopia and Southern Sudan.
Okay.
So it's growing. And I'm confident that all the partners, all the member countries that have not joined yet are in the process of joining. It's in their interest.
At the risk of ruffling a few feathers, I come from Southern Africa, and therefore the perception might be that I am trying to downplay the progress that East Africa is making. But I want to focus on Tanzania, because the interviews that I've done here, the issue has always come up that Tanzanians are slow to joining the rest of the members of the East African community, and therefore some people have been talking about a 2-speed East African community, if you like, because even in terms of implementing some of the protocols, they have been behind. In tourism in particular, this is a big issue because, of course, Tanzania is a big tourism country. What specific steps are you guys taking to try to get them to move faster than they have been doing, especially taking advantage of the new administration that we've seen coming in, which appears to be a little more proactive?
Yes, in our role as the platform, the main thing that we do is advocacy. And the Tanzanian private sector is part and parcel of the East African Tourism Platform.
What are they saying?
They're very much behind it.
Do they want to be in?
They definitely want to be behind it. The others wouldn't join the platform. The whole idea of joining the platform is realizing that we had one destination.
Explain what the platform does.
The platform, our vision is to create one destination. Is to say, listen guys, we're not competition, we're complementary products. Totally complementary. Rwanda and Uganda offer totally different product to what Kenya and Tanzania offer. Even in the case of Serengeti and the Mara that are seen as competitive products, most tourists do both. Most, 80–90% do both Serengeti and the Mara. So what we're saying here is that we are complementary products, and the sooner we realize that, the better. So we're advocating for one destination. When the governments have gone ahead and started working on one visa, we're actually tagging behind. We're very slow as a private sector.
Sure.
The governments are forward thinking, so we're kind of trying to catch up. And our role is to wake up the private sector and say, guys, we're one destination. Let's work on this. Let's create one platform. Let's create one marketing program. And that's happening, and very fast.
Do you have a time frame within which you'll be in a state where you could say to us you'll be happy and you would have made the progress that you want to make?
I don't think you can put a time frame to this. It's an ongoing process. It's a work in progress. It really is.
Is this more politics than business?
No, it's more business than politics on our level as a private sector.
Right.
It's purely business.
John, have you seen the kind of issues that we were talking about here with Manzi? from your side?
Of course, as an operator, the first would I say, the most important factor to do our kind of business is an open sky.
Yeah.
In entire Africa, if it was possible.
But open skies comes with competition, John.
Exactly. It doesn't matter. But at least opportunity is open to all. And then, what do I say? Then those that can do it well will remain in business.
Yeah.
Of course, there will always be some that have to fall out of the business.
Sure.
It happens, it's only natural.
Yeah.
But the biggest issue that we have had on the continent, and I'm taking this beyond the East African region,
yes,
into the entire continent, is that despite the fact that more than 30 years ago, nearly 90% of the African leadership and governments signed the Yamoussoukro decision that would have allowed for open skies on
across
the
Africa
continent. We still find today resistance from a number of member states on the continent, whereby it does not only hurt the operators to have the flexibility to even lower fares, and it comes as an extra burden and an extra restriction, which actually make the Africans continue to suffer.
But I wanted to stick with you for a little while, because the other big issue, of course, that we face, yes, we want open skies, but open skies bring with them competition, as I said earlier. And one of the big threats to African airlines within your sector has been the emergence of Middle East carriers. In particular, we have to talk about Emirates and the impact that it has had on the African continent. Would that not hurt airlines like yours, while obviously bringing in the visitors that we want, but still you can't profit at the expense of the locals because you want them to be part of it?
Look, definitely, again, the irony of it is that at times, would I say, Africans hate themselves. Why I say that, you'll find that some of those operators, airlines that are outside the continent, actually are quick to get those rights I'm talking about.
For
and
for
yet,
outsiders.
The same countries are quick to deny African operators similar rights. So that is something I wouldn't want to even indulge in, because I don't know why it happens the way
I'll
it happens.
volunteer and I'll take it up with the African Union and ask Nkosazana Zuma why that is the case.
But coming back to competition, there would be no issue for us competing effectively on the continent. As African operators, one, we understand the continent better.
Sure.
We have obviously a competitive advantage over someone coming from without Africa.
Yeah.
But some of those issues, regulatory issues, need to be resolved.
Yeah.
But of course, I also come back to we as African operators. I think our future lies in how much we are able to come together and synchronize our operations, synergize where we can, and eventually lead to a more united service provider on the continent. And then we'll be able to fend off those that are trying to come from without Africa.
Yeah.
Because one, for sure, these are big-pocketed airlines, supported in most cases by their rich governments.
Yeah.
They can afford to dump,
Yeah.
they can afford to mess the market on the continent. And we have seen it. It's not only RwandaAir, we are a very small player, but even the mid-sized players that the continent has always boasted about.
Yeah.
The South African,
Absolutely.
the ETs,
Kenya
the
Airways,
Kenya Airways, EgyptAir, and so on, are all going through very stressful times because of very unfair competition from some of those carriers that are dumping.
Yeah.
And the fact that we are having to deal with is that today all African operators or African airlines put together, we do not even make 10% of the entire African traveler market.
90% has gone to outside.
To outside carriers, which is a very sickening position that we need to do something about.
When we come back after the break, I want to ask you, Manzi, what you think of that, number one. Number two, I also want to ask you what you think of the state of competition within the region, because for you, I suppose, what matters are the numbers that you see coming through. Welcome back. You're watching a special debate on the potential of the tourism sector in East Africa and some of the initiatives and challenges that the region faces as it tries to catch up with other nodes of the African continent where we have been seeing numbers grow. In the studio with me to discuss the topic, I have the CEO of RwandaAir, John Mirenge. Next to him is Belise Kariza, Chief Tourism Officer, Rwanda Development Board. And next to her is Manzi Kayihura. He is Chairman, East Africa Tourism Platform. Manzi, when we went to the break, John was explaining the state of the African airline industry. In particular, the startling stat that he gave us was that 90% of our revenues are going offshore. 10% has been left for the African market. And I made the point that as far as you're concerned, of course, I think for you, competition is good because it means lower prices, which potentially means higher numbers. How do you look at that particular situation?
Competition is very healthy, and again, as a platform, Open Skies is one of the things that we're really pushing and supporting. It's in our interest to have Open Skies. It's accessibility of markets. It's lower pricing. So that's something that we strongly advocate for. In terms of volumes coming in, we need higher volumes. At the same time, though, we have to bear in mind that the yield's got to be there.
Sure. So we need to be careful how we balance those two requirements, because you can't have growth that's fueled by foreigners without benefiting the locals.
Exactly. That's the bottom line. There's got to be some form of trickle-down effect.
Yeah. But do you see the willingness and the political will being there from the governments in terms of trying to make sure that they protect the locals while at the same time fostering competition? I raised this issue because I remember years ago when I worked in Nairobi, it used to cost $600 to fly from Johannesburg to go to Nairobi. And yet it used to cost you slightly less than that to fly from Johannesburg to Europe. And we know this situation still pertains in many of the regional routes.
I think, again, it comes down to competition. If you're the only carrier flying one route, you'll hike the prices. So the pricing is actually based on competition. And opening up the skies, like you said, will drop the prices. The more carriers fly that route, the better for everybody, for all concerned, as long as the standards are maintained.
Which is, of course, a big issue that you want to make sure that is adhered to.
That's John's concern.
I think he's making a dig at you that
I can hear that.
No, they've met all the standards they need to. All the other Africans need to follow suit.
Indeed. Okay, so let's hope that one is going to be sorted out. Let's talk as well about one other issue that I think has been a big thorn in the side of the local industry. What kind of tourist do we want? Do we want mass or do we want niche? From your side, what is your stance?
I think every country has its own strategy.
But you want to sell the region as one? We
want to sell the region as one. There's different categories of a market. There's the high end, there's mid-range, there's the low end. So all this can be served, but everybody has their own strategy. Like, for example, Rwanda's strategy is based on low volumes and high yields.
Right.
The strategy. On the other hand, if you look at the coast of Kenya, at their peak, they were doing 50 charters a week into Mombasa. That's plus minus 8,000 people a week flying into that airport. So all this can be combined to create one product.
Isn't there a danger, though, that by combining the two, you would be undermining the strategy of the other? I think you may want to come in there.
Yeah, to echo Manzi, Rwanda is positioning itself as a high-end.
Yeah, and you don't want the charters to come here?
Yes, ideally, right? So as a high-end, not only a high-end destination, but also a very sustainable destination. Because without conservation of our tourism assets, in 20, 30 years, we will not be talking about tourism industry. So to answer the question, we'll want to not focus on the mass-oriented tourists. We want to focus on the niche tourists, the ones interested in gorilla trekking, and the ones who are birds lovers, etc. So yeah, so it's mostly on a high-end and sustainable tourism.
John, do you see how this could be handled? Because it appears a contradiction to me. I guess from your perspective, you would rather go with mass because obviously you want to fill your planes.
I mean, in the airline industry, we're known for for catering for all classes.
Yes.
I mean, even if you look at the number
even
of
though
classes.
you differentiate us when we get on board.
Exactly. When you look at the class of ticket, the classes, the fare classes that we sell,
yes,
you'll find them running into 10s or 15 different.
I've never understood
on the same flight. That is to take care of the low end all the way to the high end that require special attention and special facilitation. So in our situation, I think we still need those seats to be filled.
Yeah.
And for that, we need the bums on. So we would definitely prefer a situation where we get streams of tourists in the region moving around.
Does that not undermine then their approach in terms of the selling the region as one single destination, therefore, where one buys a package that takes them from Kigali and the mountains here right to the coast in Mombasa and then back into the mountains?
I think in our situation, that it doesn't undermine it in any way, because we serve the region, the entire sub-region. I mean, if there were movements of tourists in numbers moving into Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, I'm sure given the way they price the products that are found in all the countries, tourists will move to where they find the products that are within their reach. So at the end of the day, as an intra-Africa operator, we definitely would benefit, because we still move the masses to wherever they must be.
Belise, in the last few years, one of the things that we have seen, a trend I think that's going to probably to continue into the future, has been an increase in the amount of money that's invested within the African tourism sector. I came across some numbers from the African Development Bank again, and I remember one of the things that stuck out for me was that they said this sector is set for growth. In fact, since 1990, it's quadrupled, with 65 million visitors in 2014, bringing in $44 billion. And the question has always then come up, do we have the capacity to be able to absorb those visitors that are coming? Are we investing as much as we should be doing, given the trend that we're seeing happening over the years? From the Rwandan perspective, how has that been?
I'll take a bit back when we're talking about the niche concept. There is one niche market that we have identified with a lot of potential, which is MICE. MICE stands for Meeting, Incentives, Conferences and Events. And I think MICE has contributed a lot in those numbers because the beauty of MICE is that you get a flock of tourists at a go in a country for 1 week or an extended period of time. So back to the investment, or if we're able to actually cater for all those tourism, yes, there are a lot of investment happening. Especially for MICE, we've just recently completed the Kankigali site, which is a tented village that cater for more than 2,000 delegates. We have as well the Kigali Convention Center that is going to open up sometimes mid this year.
I saw it when I was coming in. It's taking shape, and the dome is looking nice. I got confused. I thought that looked like a bit like London.
The dome is, I'm sure you're probably aware, the dome is a representation of our culture, of our housing culture. That's why it has that shape. So it's going to open up in mid of this year, and we'll be able to cater for 2,600 delegates. Now, those on the side of the conferences, I think that's already a lot of progress. Then I will move into the accommodation, which has been a lot of polemics around it. We have around 5 to 6 international brand hotels that are going to open up. Among them, I'll mention Radisson Blu Hotel, the Marriott. I'm sure you've seen it. It has a lot of shape right now. I'm talking about Zinc Hotel, and so many more that are going to open up this year in 2016. So we're looking at an additional 1,000 to 1,500 rooms in the range of 4 to 5 star hotels.
That's being added. So the capacity is being built up.
Yes, the capacity is being built
Are
up.
your members participating, or are you listening to her talking about the foreigners who are coming, the international brands that are building up and adding capacity here?
Oh, yes, we are. We're very excited about it. The more the merrier.
Yeah. Which side would you say your members are participating in? Is that in the B&Bs, or is it more the big hotels that some of which she's talking about?
Starting off with the MICE, Meetings, Incentives, Conferences and Exhibitions,
yes.
our members offer pre- and post-tours, as an example. So we already benefit from that. The hotel rates inevitably are going to dip a little bit. Some people are happy about that.
It's a lot of money, and yeah.
Exactly. So that when the volumes are going up for us.
Yeah.
And it allows you to still pick the niche that you want out of that market.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. One of the big issues has always been, of course, the danger that by opening up to the outside world, you run the risk that your own people will not be able to compete. Across the region, are you seeing a concerted effort from the governments to try to make sure that the locals are part and parcel of the growth that we're talking about?
Over time, yes. What has happened, traditionally tourism was mainly run by foreigners.
Yes.
Because we rely on foreign markets. But if you look at all the countries, more and more local companies have come in and have become stronger. Sure. And it's about creating partnerships. You can't do it alone because you're getting tourists from the rest of the world, so you need some kind of partnership. Yeah. So the local element is very important, and it's becoming stronger and stronger in terms of ownership.
Do you separate it from the overall government strategy, or you specifically ask for incentives to get the locals going on, or the Africans to come in for that matter?
Like I said, most governments, in the case of Rwanda, are ahead of the private sector. Sure. So we're actually catching up because the incentives have been given already. Yeah. We haven't really taken advantage of them. Yeah. That's why, as a platform, we're saying, guys, everything's in place. Yeah. As a private sector, let's rethink this. Yeah. The way we're working, let's look at, like I said, inter-African, intra-African. Let's look at that again because the incentives are already in place. Yeah. And everything that's been asked for has been given.
Are those intra-African numbers coming through on the numbers that you were talking about? Not too many. So the Africans are not investing inside the hotel industry. That's effectively, that's what it's suggesting.
We haven't seen that, but we believe that, like Manzi is saying, that with a lot of awareness and promotion and all the incentives that are already in place, we'll be able to attract those investors. But the big numbers is international investors. Yeah, yeah.
Now, let's talk about one other difficult issue. I call it the Achilles heel here, dealing with the insecurity and the terror threat and the danger that it poses for the tourism industry within our region, within the African continent. And also the other issue around branding of Africa. You were talking earlier about the fact that Ebola drove away a large number of tourists, even though there were no cases that came to East Africa. How do you mold that message? First, around trying to explain to people the issue of the terror threat and the issue of insecurity?
We do have an image problem in that respect. Again, we're seen as one. If something happens in Sierra Leone, that's closer to London than to Rwanda, we suffer.
As long as you mention Africa.
As long as you mention Africa, we suffer. Yeah. And that's why we have to get a group approach to this and say, like, we as a market have to come together and market it together. We have to come together and create the awareness. Come together and talk together. You know, just get a common voice, because we're not doing that presently. So there's no effect, because everybody's doing the small bits, and it's not working. So until we learn to come together as Africans or as East Africans and say, this is what we are, this is what we have to offer, we can overcome that.
Is there a platform that you are using?
From social media to every available platform is being used currently.
Yeah.
Yes.
John, I'd imagine this is something that you also deal with from an airline perspective.
Definitely. I mean, when you talk of the Ebola problem, we saw a significant drop in travelers coming into the continent. Meetings were cancelled, tourist numbers went down, everything, and those are empty seats that we were flying around. I mean, you saw drop in South Africa in terms of tourism and meetings, just because of Ebola. And check where South Africa and West Africa are. But again, it's a perception thing, and just like Manzi has put it, it's a concerted effort that we need as a continent to communicate our story. And whenever there are issues, like they happen in other continents, but we should not always be lumped together. When there's a little problem somewhere, then the whole of Africa is branded as such. It's a big problem we have, the communication problem that we need to deal with. Indeed, I just hope that part of the terrorism you're talking about, the Ebola issues,
yeah,
we could also instill some confidence in the world over. I mean, from an airline perspective,
right,
when it comes to, you know, the safety side of it. You know, the continent is still, would I say, the poorest performer when it comes to airline safety and security for that.
Right.
Again, it's not a good thing. It's not a good reflection of Africa.
And this is something we could do something about.
Something we could do about. There's a lot we could do about it, but for some reason, probably our regulators on the continent have just chosen to ignore that.
Sure.
And this is impacting all of us. You talk about unsafe flying, everybody refers to Africa. At some point, IATA had tried to come up with a program to try and encourage and probably force all African carriers to become certified as safe airlines.
Yeah.
But I can tell you...
This is from a technical perspective.
From a safety perspective. The technical, the flying, the cockpit, the airports that we operate. Of course, Africa is still dogged with lots of unsafe airports.
Absolutely. I remember the issue of the guys who hid in the wheel wells or some of the planes. The guy who dropped in London,
exactly.
I remember, yeah.
But I hope that all of us can come up as a continent and take a position.
Sure.
A few of us have done the right thing to make sure that we are safe, and we only don't play safe, but we invite IATA to come and actually audit our organizations and help certify us. So I hope more and more airlines on the continent can do that. Yes. But some time back you were talking about the investments that are happening. I would also want to say here that as an airline in Rwanda, we are doubling our capacity, the seats that we are offering before the end of this year. Through orders of new airplanes that we are bringing on board.
I remember the A330.
Yes, the A330.
Remind us again, when is it landing?
The first one will be here in September, followed very closely in December. And then we have two other brand new 737-800s that are coming through. So in totality, by the end of this year, we'll have doubled our seats available, which comes to resolve the problems that are brought by the new hotels that are being built in the country.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to come to the issue of security or insecurity. We know about the turmoil in Burundi and how that will impact Rwanda going into the future. And we also know, obviously, the DRC is going to be holding elections later this year, and people obviously will become concerned. As we say, you speak about insecurity in one part of the continent, it affects the rest. How do you mold then that message as the RDB in promoting tourism in Rwanda?
I'll speak a little bit about the country branding and
sure.
So a country branding is made of two things, right? A country's identity and the country's perception, the perception that is from the outside world.
Sure.
So each country has an identity. Each African country now has an identity, right? The problem we face here and the problem we face with Ebola is that the outside world think that Africa is one country. They don't know that we have 54 countries.
55 if you include the Arab Sahara Democratic Republic, I always like to add.
So if we manage to create a good perception about each and every one of our countries, African countries, to the outside world, I think it will help us in selling each country differently. And about the insecurity, of course, when there is insecurity in the region, it somehow affects the neighboring countries. And specifically for Rwanda, Rwanda itself is a safe country. It's been proven. We have the Gallup report that was released.
I'll vouch for that.
Yes,
I mean,
in 2015 September. So we are confident that the fact that Rwanda itself is a secure country, is a safe country, will not be that much affected by the turmoil that is happening in Burundi. Yeah. That's all I can say for now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Is there something that you guys can also do from the private sector side?
We just have to keep pushing. We have to keep sending the message.
Right.
You just have to keep doing it. Every trade fair you go out there and send the message again and again and again and again. Yeah. It's creating awareness.
And hope the adage that if you repeat it often enough, it becomes truth.
Yes.
I'll also mention something. I've recently talked to some international media, Lonely Planet, etc. And one of the interesting that they told me is that we should, as African countries, we should start selling those unconventional stories.
Sure.
The fact that, just give you an example, the fact that last year in the New York fashion show, there were twin Rwandans, two gentlemen who are twins, who are Rwandans, but it was not mentioned anywhere. Right.
I'm looking blank because
so those are the unconventional stories that we need to create. We need to give out,
and our good stories as well, as loudly as we can.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah. What about the other one of my big bugbears, and this is the immigration services. You know, when you go to Europe and you pass through those airports, the professionalism of the staff just astounds you. You come into Africa and you approach those desks where our officials are manning, and it's a completely different experience. Okay, I'll raise my hand a little bit about Rwanda, but then again, we could be talking about smaller numbers here. Could there be more? Do you talk to the government officials about improving that first experience of a tourist when they arrive and have contact with the immigration services?
You're absolutely right. That's a very important aspect. There's never a second chance for first opinion.
Absolutely.
So you're right. We do advocate for that and say, look, we need to train, especially customs and immigration, on customer service.
Especially immigration.
Yes.
Because once you get past your immigration and you do the customs guys, those guys are a little bit aggressive, but necessarily because they are guarding against other things.
Yes, in some of member countries, it's a problem, where you actually find it's intimidating.
Yeah.
And the job is actually to facilitate entry and not to intimidate you.
Absolutely.
So it's a challenge in some of our member countries. So we're trying to advocate for that to change, for some kind of training to be done. All that comes with funding, so we are working on that as well. That's vital. Immigration is vital.
Is that something that you guys are working on, John, as well?
As airlines, through AFRA, we've only tried to push our voice through our association.
But you know what I'm talking about.
We know what you're talking about. It's a real problem. It's a real problem. It's like every time you get close to the desk, it's like you are very unwelcome. It's like you are an intruder that needs to be treated with suspicion. Yet you're visiting a country and you're probably coming to spend your own money in that country.
And sometimes they look at you and they ignore you, they keep chit-chatting, and you're watching and you're sitting there.
So we've had some noise made through AFRA.
Okay.
But again, I mean, we are trying to use the case of Rwanda, where immigration has really been brought to appreciate guests.
True.
Be it Africans or even non-Africans.
Yeah.
But it's work to be done. There's a lot of work to be done.
Absolutely. What about at the EAC level, the East African Community level? Are you seeing enough energy from there, recognizing the role that tourism plays within the whole integration effort?
Definitely. All member countries appreciate the fact that tourism is a necessary part of the economy. Leading, foreign exchange is needed. And through the East African Business Council, of which we are a member, the East African Tourism Platform is a member of the East African Business Council.
Right.
So we do get to get the right voice at that level to deal with it, yes.
Yeah. Could there be more that could be done perhaps within the EAC itself to promote tourism, given its ability to create, to earn foreign currency?
Oh, definitely. Yes. That needs to be pushed as an agenda and more, yes.
Yeah.
A lot more could be done.
Yeah. Belise?
I'll just talk a little bit again about the immigration.
Yeah.
They mentioned.
Sorry, I skipped you because.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
You also experienced it anyway.
Yeah. So I'll just say a few things about our immigration in Rwanda. They have been recently ranked at 89% for the customer service survey, which I think it's amazing. followed by RDB. Of course, I would need to mention that as well. I think it's a great thing to give an example of our immigration officers. We've seen a lot of progress. We've seen a lot of improvement. They understand and they know the importance of customer service. And to answer the question of what has been done or what are we doing, RDB has started, I say the country has a campaign called Nayombi campaign, in which we provide customer service trainings, basics trainings from the private sector and the public sector. Okay. We've recently, for Chan, I'll mention it, we've recently given some trainings to the waiters and waitresses in all these private sector, from restaurants, hotels, etc. I think on the country's level, there are a lot of things that are being done, and then we acknowledge that customer service is a ~1 priority.
Absolutely. On that celebratory note, we have to end it there. Thank you very much indeed for joining us today. Belise is from the Rwanda Development Board. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. My other panelists are John Mirenge, CEO of RwandaAir, as well as Manzi Kayihura, Chairman, East African Tourism Platform. Thank you for joining us today for our debate on the tourism sector within the East African community. Until next time, goodbye.